everyone. I'm glad you tuned into PAC 14 today because I have a wonderful nonprofit to talk about, and it is involved with historic preservation in Wicomico County. The name of our organization is Preservation Trust Wicomico, and I am honored to be the president of this organization. And I have a very special guest with me today. My guest is Jim Morris, and he is our former president and has spent many more years than I have at Preservation Trust. So I guess the big question for people who don't know about us, Jim, is how did Preservation Trust Wicomico get started? What needs or what reasons arose that we started this great nonprofit that we have?
Well, it actually started, I guess, close to 25 years ago, and I'm not sure who started it. It was before my time, but it grew. It changed names several times, and as when I finally became part of it, it was a group that was meeting at the NAB Center, and we were providing help for people that wanted to know more about the history and to make sure that we preserve some of the houses in Salisbury, at least preserve them on documents to show where they were, what they were like, so that they wouldn't be torn down, or if they were torn down, at least we had a record of them.
Yes, there's nothing sadder than seeing a photograph of a lot that says that this house built in 1730s once stood here, and
Right.
There's no documentation of that. So it was really a need for preservation of the historic places of Wicomico County.
Correct.
Among other reasons, but that's our big, I think that's our big drive to share information and interest with people on how much history we have here in Wicomico County.
And we do have a lot.
We do, because, what Salisbury, the city of Salisbury, was that 1730 something
Yes, about
that was kind of
It was basically
given the name, and
let's see, can't even think what
it
it's
was
called.
like a port, trading
Well,
area.
there wasn't much that came up here. Most of the things actually stopped down around Pemberton because the water was so shallow.
Right.
But there was a ferry that went across down where the bridge is today, and that was where the city of Salisbury started. They drew up a plat in the 1700s, and that was where the city of Salisbury started. They started with building lots, and they didn't sell too well at that point. But it wasn't until later when the river was, they were able to navigate the river up to Salisbury, and then when the trains came in, which was right around 1860, that's when Salisbury really became a hub and started to grow very fast.
And we had about was it two grist mills we had, or were there more than that?
Oh, there were a lot of
There were a
grist
lot
mills.
at that
Yeah.
time, even back in the early.
Even back in the early days, there were a lot of grist mills all over between Mardella, Salisbury, Leonard's Pond, Shoemaker Pond, which of course are names now, but they had different names back then.
And as construction, the lots came into demand, and more construction, there was more need, I'm
And
assuming.
a lot of the mills were not grist mills. A lot of the mills were actually lumber mills. And of course, they had to have water in order to get the lumber mills. So they were all built on water areas. And my grandparents were some of those that had mills.
Well, I know there were a couple big ones right before the Civil War in Salisbury. I don't know if any of it and the numbers had gone down by then, or whereas the wealthier people kind of, monopolized the mill business.
Yeah, the mill business grew.
The Humphreys and
the Humphreys and the Jacksons and all of those had mills all along the river, which is part of the Humphreys Pond, which was back behind where the courthouse is. That area was all a large pond, and that pond was what furnished the power for these mills that were all along the river. And once that went out and the pond broke down because they had excavating equipment that went over it that was too heavy, and the dam broke, and then the Humphreys Pond disappeared. And because by that time we had electricity, they didn't choose to build it back and
Right.
make it into a pond again. So that's
Yes.
all the lower area behind the post office, or in front of the post office, and behind the courthouse where you go down the hill. That was all water at one time. Everything, and behind the old firehouse, that was all water.
And unfortunately, since we had two great fires in 1860 and 1886, is that correct?
Yeah.
That burnt down all of our really old, pretty much all of our old architecture other than Poplar Hill Mansion, and there might be parts of some homes. Pemberton is still, well, that had to be rebuilt, but at least we had an idea of what the house looked like. So we don't have a lot left
No,
from
a
the
lot of that did
1700s.
burn down. Between the two fires, at the first fire, almost everything was made out of wood.
Yes.
By the time we had the second fire, a lot of it was brick, but the fallacy was that we didn't have water, the availability of water to put out the fire, because there was no water pressure. And that was the reason that stack is behind John B. Parsons' home now, because that was put in 2 years after the fire to provide water pressure. So if we had another fire, we'd have the water pressure to put the fire out.
And I understand that, believe it was the second fire when they had the new pump fire engines, they actually held off on putting out the fire, waiting to try out this wonderful new fire engine, and it didn't function right. And by then, since they were all wood structures, the fire had gotten completely out of
Yep.
control, so we lost everything again. But interestingly enough, that was the beginning of our fire insurance, and building the houses so they weren't so close to each other. After that second great fire. So we learned a few lessons anyway,
Yes, we did.
painful lessons. So the history of our area is very important to us, and we often have people come to us with questions about architecture and specific areas, and we try to help them. And of course, NAB Center has they're a huge resource for people looking up information on their historic places. But we also not only worry about historic architecture, but we worry about our old cemeteries and the little family plots that there are so many of in pretty much every rural area. And you can talk a little bit about what we're doing at Preservation Trust with our cemeteries.
Well, the cemeteries are becoming even more vulnerable all the time. The old cemeteries that were on people's farms, in most cases, the people no longer own those farms.
Right.
They've all passed away, and the farms have been bought up by other people who really have no desire to have the cemetery on them. In fact, a lot of the farms would like it if the cemeteries were gone, because
Yes.
with their equipment for watering and all, they've always got to have a concern that they can't swing through the cemetery because they just can't get through there with
Sure.
their equipment. So I think a lot of farmers would love to see the cemeteries disappear, the ones who didn't own it before. And so these cemeteries are disappearing because nobody's taking care of them. And usually the cemeteries will have a fence of some type around it,
Yes.
either pipes or whatever, and they're all falling apart. And one of the odd things is birds come into a cemetery, and birds, when they sit on a stone, will drop their droppings,
Yes.
which usually consist of seeds, and seeds grow up trees. The trees break down the cemeteries, break down the stones, get into the vaults. And so pretty soon these cemeteries, which you often see a cemetery on a hill with trees around them, it's because the birds have come there. The trees
They
were not
planted
there
their own
before.
forest.
They planted their own forest, and that, eventually ruins the cemetery.
So when I know that a group, part of our group goes out and looks for these little places and also responds to people who have said there's a cemetery out on this dirt road or down near the swamp or whatever. Can you take a look at it? It looks like there's hardly anything left. So that's something that you do with
Yes, we
with
do
a group.
that. However, you've got to be careful when you do it because you don't want to encroach on someone's property.
Yes, we need to ask permission
So,
whenever possible.
For example, 3 that we're working on right now, we have gone and gotten permission from the farmer who now owns it, which was not the original people that were there, and he's very willing for us to go in and try to take care of the cemetery and bring it up to standards. So that's something that we do now, and we look into a lot of cemeteries around.
And it's genealogy too. You
Yes,
might
it
find
is.
somebody, one of your family names in one of these plots. You never know. I mean, often they'll tell you we believe this is so-and-so's, but then we get there and some of them have no names left on the stones or no stones. So that's a challenge.
Right. Yeah, depending on what kind of stone it is, depends on how well it holds up.
Now, one of the things that I found out trying to obtain grants for a historic home is that there are very few chances to get a grant if you are trying to protect and preserve a cemetery. They are few and far between, and to the point where they'll say there are almost no grants. So this was one thing that we thought was important. If you want to talk about that a little bit, about the grant.
Yes, we had some money come to us from, actually, sounds like now, a couple of different places that are going to provide some money where we can help out people by grants, or even, as I mentioned before, our going out there and doing it ourselves. If it's a small cemetery, but at least helping out with people to take care of a cemetery and get it back in an order, and hopefully by getting it back in order they'll be able to take care of it themselves from then on.
And that grant is a regular grant process. You're not going to drive to Crownsville or anything. It stays within our group, but you do have to meet grant criteria. You have to show that you're going to be able to keep this cemetery up once we loan the money. And but it's very helpful. It's a beginning, and it can be a huge help for a small church or a small cemetery, someplace separate than a church, in order to preserve that.
And this is a new process with us. It isn't something we've been doing for a long time, so we're working our way through it, and there may be some glitches that we have to face in the future.
Now, as I recall, it's a matching grant, isn't it? The one we're giving. So you do have to show that you care enough that you are going to raise some money to help not only get this cemetery back on good footing, and but you're not just going to use the money and then just let it sit there waiting for somebody to give you more money. You do have to work a little, like we all do, towards getting that money. But I think it's a wonderful idea. And we have so far just one person who's working on a grant.
Yeah.
So,
but we have provided some money for other people for different things. There was a young man who was in the Boy Scouts who was working on a cemetery, and we provided some money to help him get that
for
done
his
for his
Eagle
project.
Scout, yes. That was the Potter's Field, or the Salisbury's old public cemetery behind Arby's, and he did a wonderful job and was very grateful for the money and support he got from the community. So again, that's all part of our history and our architecture, and it's important for us to keep those up. It shows that we have pride in our area and we do care about our history.
We have given a number of different grants to smaller homes to either finish the home so it could be sold, or for historic homes to be able to put a new roof on or whatever needed to be done.
I had almost forgotten that. Most recently was money that we donated to Allen for the Historical Society for the Huffington Pollitt House, which is going to be the home of their new museum. And it's, it's quite costly when you do an old home. And just prior to that, we did a home for resale, as you said,
Yes, and this was in
through
Newtown.
Wacomico County Historical Properties. And that was a house on the corner of Poplar Hill and Isabella, which
Right.
luckily has been sold to a local resident who is going to be restoring that house. So it's
It's all a matter of being able to keep the places rather than letting
Tear them down.
deteriorate until they have to be torn down.
Yes, and it's great to actually know you're making a difference and you're helping somebody, their organization, or just keeping that place there so that others can see the beauty of the architecture from our past.
You can actually apply for a grant. You have to have proof, meet certain criteria,
Yes.
and show proof that what you're going to use the money for, and follow up after that to prove that the money had been used for what it was designed for. But all this comes through the Community Foundation, and they, our monies are in there. The
We
money
have an
that
endowment fund there.
Yes, and that can be used for once we determine the need. But there is an application process that you have to go through, and we do have applications for that.
And we'll be happy to help you if you just contact us either through mail or give us a call.
All right, that sounds good.
As people who have lived here since, this is working on
Well, my family
300,
came in
400
in,
years.
My family on my mother's side came in 1640. My family on my father's side came in 1666. So I see a lot of cemeteries and find some of my family in many of the cemeteries that are around here.
And I think a lot of people have no idea how long this area has been settled. And it's a wonderful area, but I think it's important to keep our history and our architecture and our cemeteries so that the young people can use that as information to study their past as well. And I think that's what all preservation societies or nonprofits try to do, is protect our history. It's not all about improving the city and building new houses and forgetting your past. You never should forget your past. And so that's what one of our goals is, would you say, Jim?
Yes.
Making sure that is remembered.
And going back, you have to remember that if you go back past 1867, we were not Wycomico County
Right.
at that time. We were either Somerset or Worcester County. In 1867, we became Wycomico County, which was taken from Somerset and Worcester. So you have to remember that if you go back beyond that, when you're looking in different records, you have to change your process, because now you're in Somerset or Worcester County.
Yes.
When you're looking it up, and you have to go to either Snow Hill to the courthouse or library to find information, or down in Princess Anne to find the information.
Right, and it's not like, you're looking for your records on something and it's like, there's no history. That's not true. It's just in Somerset and Worcester. And was it North Division Street that was the division between the two counties?
Division Street was went all the way from Delmar down near Princess Anne. And so that line was the dividing line between Worcester and Somerset counties.
Yes.
And today you can follow it right on down. It's still the same road. If you drive up to Delmar on Old 13, that was the dividing line. And you used to pay your taxes to one place or the other instead of Wycomico.
Now we just put a stamp on the envelope and
Yeah.
or do it on the computer. We had to travel back then. So along with our cemeteries and our preservation of historic places, by photographs or lectures or the various things we do. Something else that we're doing, which is really neat, if you have a historic home, and if you're not sure, then you can go to the NAB Center or a nice place like that, County Records, and check how old your house is. We sell a wonderful plaque for historic homes. And it must be at least 100 years old. Is that what we decided
That's right.
on? And if the construction's iffy, like the house was built during the Civil War and it took 10 years, you can do a circa date on it if you're not sure. But the plaque is very nice. It looks wonderful on your front porch, by the door, or I don't know, that seems to be the place most people put it. I guess you
Yeah.
can put a post up or something, but most people put it on their front, by their front door. And these plaques are being made by it's a local artist we're using,
Yes, ma'am.
correct? And it's $75 at this
I
time.
believe that's correct.
I mean, it can go up any time. You can't count on prices staying the same, but it's a really great plaque. And if you'd like to see a picture, you can go on our website, which is Preservation Trust Wicomico Incorporated, and you can see a picture of that plaque. And there's an order form on there also. And if you are interested and aren't quite sure, give us a call, and you can call Jim or you can call me. We'll put you to the right person. And my number is 410-749-5168. And Jim?
Mine is 410-742-4059.
Did I skip the 410 in front of mine?
I do
I
not
never.
know.
That means I've been here too long because I don't remember the area code. But you can call either of us, or just go online and it'll tell you how to give you a form you can print out. And then if you have questions, just give us a call, because it is really nice to have. And something I look at when I go through towns where I haven't been before is looking for historic homes, and many of them have some type of plaque. This is just a plaque. If you have a name of your house, like my house is Toadvin House, and that was begun around the Civil War and completed in the early 70s. You can put that on. This isn't the type that you're going to put information like so-and-so lived here. The first mayor of Salisbury lived here, or whatever. It's just to tell the date of your house and if you have a name that your house is called by. And I think that's all we put on, isn't it, Jim?
It's basically just a historic plaque.
And if you have a friend, oh my gosh, that would be the best gift. It would be a wonderful gift to give them. And it'd make a great housewarming gift, too, if somebody's just bought a historic home that they're going to restore, don't you think, Jim?
Yes, I think that would be an
I think that's a
excellent
great
idea.
idea. So that's where our information is. If you need a plaque, please go on there and we'll help you out with it, because we're very excited to be able to do this. Now, something else, I was not on the board when this came out, but we have a wonderful book, At the Crossroads, written by Paul Tuart, who's a local architect, and he's an architect or he studies
yeah.
historic architecture. He doesn't
He's
build
done
homes.
several books. He's done one on Somerset County and one on Worcester
Yes.
County, and I believe he's working one on Dorchester County.
Oh, okay.
So he's done a number of books.
This was the last one at this point he did,
This,
Wasn't
yes,
it?
I believe this is the last one that
because it
he did.
takes a long time,
takes-
10 years or so.
Yeah, it took quite a while for us to actually get it out and put it together. This is actually 3 books in one. It's the first book is actually a history of the Delmarva Peninsula, and it was written by somebody else. The second book is Paul Tuart's book on the Wicomico County, and the third one is actually a book that the Preservation Trust put together, which is on the historic houses. It's an inventory of the houses of Wicomico County.
The belongings that were in the house, or just the inventory of the homes
It was
themselves?
basically an inventory of the homes itself and what they were like and all. Paul's section of the book goes through how it was an architectural book of how different things were made and all. So it's 3 different books in one, and we
It's a huge book, as you can see.
It's a huge book, which is a very good coffee table book.
Oh, yeah.
And we sell it for $25. It was originally being sold for $50 when we first got the book and put it out.
So that's a huge bargain.
That's a huge bargain. It's $25 worth of weight if you were
Yeah,
to buy it
I mean, his
today.
arms are hurting. I can just feel the muscles because that book weighs a ton. And what I was fascinated with when I was looking at it was seeing the colonial homes, and some of them are no longer there,
Yes.
but they described the home that was on that property. Again, there's the blank lot thing again that just is so frustrating. But through his description, you can picture the rooms and see that they often, colonial homes had a bedroom downstairs, usually, and that was just part of it, even though they had rooms upstairs, and other little strange rooms that we wouldn't think of using anymore, but they needed those at that point. So it's really good to read about those and how the fireplaces were constructed. And
The early closets were flat closets. You hung the clothes in them facing you rather than on the angles that we put them in now.
on pegs.
Yeah, they would hang them on pegs. So you didn't have the amount of clothes you have today. And
Right.
the closets were very narrow because of the way you hung things in them. And it wasn't until later that they changed that around, which of course that's much more practical today.
Well, it makes sense when you have to get your wool from the sheep or your linen, your flax, and you've got to go through the whole process of getting that to the point where you can spin it and make your cloth, spin it, make your yarn or thread, then make the clothing. You're not going to have a lot of clothes.
Well, people
even though-
usually ended up with their Sunday clothes,
Yes.
their Sunday going to meeting clothes, as they used to say. And that would be pretty much what you would have for Sundays. You'd have your one suit, and then there would be other things that you would have to work in.
Well, all I can say is it's a fascinating book, and if you have a historic home or you're just interested, you can go through there and find the homes that you're looking for and get an idea of the date and the type of architecture. It's great for art students, architecture students, and just lovers of history as we are. So I am really glad you could come today, Jim, and let us know a little bit more about Preservation Trust. As I said, you know a lot more than I do because you've been involved for so many years. But check our website out at Preservation Trust Wicomico Incorporated, and that'll have more information on it and the forms you need for not only the books and the plaques, but we're always looking for new members who want to really make a difference in preserving our history. So if you are interested, please check the website. There are membership forms. You can come to our meeting, which is always, it's the last meeting, not the fourth Wednesday, but the last Wednesday of the month at 4 p.m. Currently, we're meeting at the NAB Center, but that can change depending on what comes up. So contact us again. My name's Alita Davis. My phone number is 410-749-5168, and our past president Jim Morris is
410-742-4059.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you for stopping in with us for our little history spot today. And we hope that we'll see some of you and that you'll join our group. Thank you so much.